Today, Ford pulled its 2025 guidance, said Trump's tariffs could have a significant impact on the bottom line.
We know exactly what the tariff bill would look like. In terms of cost for the company, we know the offsets. Next week, I think we'll be able to tell people kind of what the tariff.
Ford has just lit the fuse on a dramatic shift in its production strategy, and the shockwaves are being felt far beyond Detroit. What once seemed like routine corporate maneuvering has turned into a high-stakes showdown that's drawing attention from Wall Street to Washington. With American jobs on the line, tariffs rising, and global production tensions escalating, Ford's every move is now under the microscope. And yes, former President Donald Trump is watching closely, and he's not staying quiet. So what's really going on at America's iconic Blue Oval? Let's lift the hood. Because this story isn't just about cars. It's about power, politics, and the future of American manufacturing. We begin with Ford's current playbook. CEO Jim Farley has been everywhere lately. Interviews, press briefings, investor calls, pushing a loud, consistent message. Ford is American. He's practically made it a mantra. In almost every public appearance, Farley goes out of his way to mention that more than 80% of Ford's vehicles sold in the US are built on American soil. But here's what he avoids saying too loudly. The other 20% of production isn't. That sizable chunk happens in places like Mexico and China. And with aggressive new tariffs taking hold, you have to wonder, how long can Ford keep playing the 80-20 game before it tips the wrong way? Recent headlines have only added more heat.
Make 80+% of our vehicles here. And to your point, it's tough to tell right now. The reason is because we're seeing double-digit sales increases since March and April.
Ford has temporarily halted production of the all-electric F-150 Lightning and officially announced it will discontinue the Ford Focus by November 2025. These are not minor adjustments. They are strategic moves in response to a tightening global squeeze. Farley, meanwhile, continues leaning into patriotism, and it's starting to feel like overcompensation. When someone repeats, "We're loyal," over and over, it doesn't breed confidence, it breeds suspicion. If you took a drink every time he says American in a press conference, you'd be out cold before the Q&A session starts. But here's where the smiles fade and the numbers punch you in the gut. Ford execs have confirmed that the latest wave of tariffs is expected to cost the company an extra $2.5 billion by 2025. That's not a rounding error. That's the kind of money that could fund multiple new models or a massive EV expansion. Instead, it's going straight into tariff penalties, forcing Ford into some serious financial recalculations. The company's reaction? Ford has suspended its financial outlook for the remainder of the year. Translation: they don't know what's coming either. In public, Farley says, "The future is in our hands." But behind closed doors, those hands may soon be assembling vehicles far from US soil, where margins aren't being shredded by government policy. And in the meantime, guess who's picking up the tab? You guessed it, American consumers. Prices have already gone up for 3 Ford models built in Mexico: the Mustang Mach-E, the Bronco Sport, and the Maverick. The price hikes range up to $2,000, and Ford isn't sugarcoating it. They're blaming the tariffs directly. So next time you see a Made in Mexico Ford parked in a US driveway, just remember, that patriotic sticker comes at a premium. Farley's tone in recent interviews says it all. He's walking a diplomatic tightrope. On one side, trying not to upset lawmakers, and on the other, calling out foreign automakers who import millions of vehicles into the US without facing equivalent tariffs.
As far as tariffs are concerned, we want a comprehensive policy, not just towards Mexico and Canada. We understand all the pressures on the border and with drugs, but the reality is, Hyundai, Kia, and Toyota can import millions of vehicles through South Korea and Japan without these tariffs. We need a comprehensive look at such a tariff change.
It's like watching someone smile while grinding their teeth, saying they're happy to help, as they write a check they never wanted to sign. And what about Trump? While he hasn't unleashed one of his signature late-night, all-caps Twitter tirades targeting Ford just yet, the situation is ripening for a response. Farley recently dropped a bombshell about possible offshoring that could easily provoke the former president, especially given Trump's long-standing stance on American manufacturing. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that Trump never stays silent for long when a corporation steps out of line with his America First ideology. So what we're witnessing here isn't just a corporate shift. It's a collision of business strategy, international trade policy, and political ego. Ford's decisions will ripple through assembly lines, boardrooms, and ballot boxes alike. This isn't just about whether a Ford is built in Michigan or Monterey. It's about whether the promise of American manufacturing can survive in a global economy that's changing faster than our policies can keep up. Stay tuned, because the next move in this high-octane standoff could come from a boardroom or a campaign stage. The storm is brewing, and this might just be the opening gust. The real question now is, can Ford steer through this minefield of trade wars, rising production costs, political landmines, and public scrutiny without veering off course? Or are we watching an American manufacturing giant heading straight toward the edge? Buckle up. This ride's about to get bumpy. We're talking billions in potential losses, tens of thousands of American jobs at risk, and political pressure cranked up to 11. And if you think that kind of headline isn't enough to rattle a former president, think again. This is Donald Trump we're talking about. A man who built his entire platform around America first and restoring U.S. manufacturing. So telling him that Ford might be shipping more jobs overseas? That's like telling Gordon Ramsay you've replaced his signature beef Wellington with a gas station microwave burrito. You know exactly what's coming next? And it definitely won't be a round of applause. And just when you think the drama has peaked, it escalates. Let's talk parts.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. We were profitable in China. We decided a couple years ago, we saw this price war coming in China, and we went to a low capital strategy with export into some of our international markets. We now made almost $1 billion in China, and actually the leader of that business is now going to be leading our whole international group. Look, those are very fit companies, BYD, etc. They're in a price war now in their home market, but that fitness is going to show up.
Ford's supply chain is starting to resemble a messy breakup. One of those, we keep getting back together even though we shouldn't situations. Despite the trade war alarm bells, they still rely heavily on foreign suppliers. And now, they're paying the price, literally. With some tariffs as high as 140%, Ford isn't just feeling pressure. They're getting crushed. That's not just protective policy. That's the economic equivalent of a steel door slamming shut on affordability. Put it this way. If your favorite $4 cup of coffee suddenly cost $14, you'd start looking for other options. Ford is doing the same. But unlike your morning latte, they can't just walk to the next cafe. They need to redraw their entire production map. Then there's Canada. Our usually polite neighbors to the north are turning up the heat. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, no relation to the automaker, though the irony is pure gold, recently called Ford's U.S. production strategy a termination day for American workers. Subtle? Not really. Accurate? Possibly.
An opportunity to speak to the Prime Minister, and I'm in full support of preparing retaliatory tariffs, tariff for tariff, but we want to see what he's going to do on April the 2nd. As we've seen over a number of months, it's on again, off again, and he said he wasn't going to do it till...
But Canada isn't just slinging sound bites. They're preparing for real consequences. Industry insiders are warning that assembly plants on both sides of the US-Canada border could soon go dark. And if that doesn't scream production crisis, nothing does. At this rate, if supply chains collapse any further, Americans may soon be dusting off cowboy boots and commuting to work on horseback. The Wild West might be making a comeback, this time fueled by steel tariffs, not spurs. Despite the chaos, Ford is still doing its best to polish the narrative. Their PR machine keeps repeating one phrase, "We're the most American company." But what does that even mean when you're hiking prices on US market vehicles and admitting that tariffs are draining billions from your budget? It starts to feel less like patriotism and more like a well-rehearsed distraction. And when CEO Jim Farley casually slips in a line like, "We've never left the US yet," you can practically hear that yet echo off the factory walls. It's corporate speak for, "We're thinking about it." Kind of like someone telling you, "I'm not angry." You know exactly what that means. They're angry. They're just waiting for the right moment to blow. With billions on the line and the stability of Ford's US operations hanging by a thread, the company's relationship with policymakers feels as volatile as a Pinto's gas tank. One wrong move, and everything could explode. So what comes next in this real-life automotive soap opera? Will Ford quietly pull back on US manufacturing while trying to keep up the red, white, and blue branding? Will Trump leap onto social media at 2 a.m., to launch an all-caps crusade against the company? Or, plot twist, will everyone suddenly play nice and pose for a flag-waving, hard-hat-wearing photo op in a factory, pretending everything is fine? Whatever happens, this story isn't stalling out. It's shifting gears. Got thoughts? Drop your wildest predictions in the comments. Will Ford double down on America or take the off-ramp to overseas factories? Smash that like button if you think tariffs are turning the auto world on its head. And subscribe for more no BS breakdowns of the forces shaping the future of American manufacturing.